The future is shaped by people who challenge what's possible and refuse to settle for the way things are. For example, people challenged the messy fountain pen and invented the ballpoint pen. This was an improvement, making writing easier, cleaner, and more accessible for everyday use. This innovation is all about small things. Sometimes, challenging the status quo means tackling big things, like reimagining how products move across oceans. Before container ships and standardized containers, moving goods was a slow, cumbersome process. Everything had to be loaded and unloaded piece by piece, which took a lot of time, effort, and space. Standardized containers changed everything. Every time someone challenges the status quo, they open the door to a better future. It's the same in architecture and engineering. These fields have advanced because people are not accepting the status quo. Here is a project that challenged the time it took to build a high-rise, which was too long. This impacted the cost and the time it took before people could actually use the building. So, members of the Charles Pankow Foundation got inspiration from how nuclear facilities are built and looked to see if their construction could impact tall building design. We partnered with Purdue University and the University of Buffalo to conduct research on nuclear reactor blast walls and adapted part of that technology in constructing core elements for high-rises. We also assembled a coalition including industry associations, steel producers and fabricators, designers, and contractors to support this research. And we received approval to use this new methodology in the construction of new buildings. Early high-rises using this new methodology, such as the 850-foot-tall Rainier Square Tower, have more than a 30% reduction in construction time. To get these dramatic results, it took people who were not satisfied with the status quo to make this happen. You too can make things happen. When you partner with us at the Charles Pankow Foundation, we start with an idea, much like we started with high-rises that take too long to build. Then we offer you support through funding, collaboration, and research, and together we change the status quo. At the Foundation, we realize that visionaries like you need support when they push beyond boundaries. For instance, the Foundation takes the lead in funding, and often we find and solicit other financial partners and in-kind donations. For all projects, we collaborate on the initial idea to assure the highest degree of expertise and leadership throughout the process. And we have relationships with the majority of leading universities in our fields to conduct research that puts the initial idea into practice. All three of these components are necessary to take a project from an idea to implementing change. Here are 3 examples that highlight each one of these vital components in greater detail. Let's start with funding, because money is always a catalyst and concern for making things happen. And your carbon impact can often affect your bottom line. This project started with the idea that while we all aspire to reduce the amount of carbon when we construct new structures, there was no standard tool to determine the carbon impact of design decisions. So whether you are using aluminum, glass, concrete, wood, steel, or heavy timber, now you can calculate the carbon impact of your design decisions. We created a methodology that was converted into a software tool called the EC3 tool, so that any designer can understand and compare the amount of carbon that results from their design decisions. This tool, that began as an idea, is now considered an industry standard. So, when you have great ideas and partner with the Charles Pankow Foundation, we can find funding and you can influence industry practices beyond carbon impact. When you partner with us, we also enable the proper collaboration that helps make things happen. Here is a project that demonstrates this component. In the previous example, we saw how you can impact new standards. But how about old standards? Decades ago, Codes in the US restricted the strength of steel reinforcing bars to 60 KSI, while Europe and Asia were using higher strength steel. This limitation was inefficient and costly. And even though people believed in the value of higher capacity steel, they were held back by the cost and effort to test and get approval for code updates. So, we found the right universities, academics, and industry stakeholders, and we commissioned a comprehensive roadmap to fully understand the steps to get approval for higher strength steel. As a result, the old codes have been updated, and we can now all use grade 80 and 100 reinforcing steel in concrete construction. This reduces carbon and cost, making construction easier and stronger, and the U.S. building industry is now on par with global competitors. Since you are the kind of person who makes things happen, I am sure you can think of other areas where you can question old standards and influence the development of new ones. Of course, anything we develop together is only possible through research. In this final example, let's look at a project where people like you started with an idea and changed our industry through comprehensive research that we helped them with. In this case, the idea revolved around energy conservation. If you consider buildings throughout history, we've seen some iconic ones, but they are not energy efficient. And energy concerns and codes have only been on the rise. How do you tackle this? Building envelopes are a large source of energy loss. Unfortunately, the ability to calculate energy loss and efficiency is not well understood or standardized, particularly for spandrel systems. So, the Foundation partnered with experts to carry out comprehensive research and create computational models that can predict the performance of spandrel assemblies. And we engaged with the U.S. Department of Energy and related entities to make sure these new computational models are accepted. Soon, you can use these models to determine if you are in compliance with new and emerging codes. Also, the research we completed can help us develop or advance new spandrel assemblies, which can also influence the design flexibility and complexity of buildings in the future. And imagine the impact you can have beyond the spandrel system in any of the components you see here. With our research capabilities, when you partner with us, you can influence many other areas in our industry. So, to make things happen, the Foundation helps you by connecting ideas with funding, collaboration, and research to transform possibilities into progress. And here's what makes this foundation truly unique. These defining principles ensure that every idea, every breakthrough we support is built on a foundation of trust, transparency, and impact. And just like the ballpoint pen changed how we write, the ideas we've shared, from rethinking steel strength to cutting construction time and reducing carbon impact, are changing how we build. And this vision isn't just a picture, it's an invitation. The future needs you here, in the very heart of what's next. Imagine what the world could look like with your ideas, your expertise, and your motivation to make things happen. So, will you join us? We invite you to be a part of the next chapter in this story. One where the future is possible because of people like you who make things happen and refuse to wait.